Hello, I'd like to let you know a little bit about a case that I recently learned about. It's a case about two statements concerning Islamic beliefs presented as part of a high school world history class, and whether those statements violated the students' First Amendment rights concerning the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment to the Constitution. Uh, Basically, the student contended that uh, her school officials were including in the course some statements about Islam that were endorsing a religion over Christianity. Specifically, these were statements about Islam, and she thought that these statements were compelling her to profess a belief in Islam. And the court concluded that the students did not violate the students' right to be free from compulsory religion, and they did not compel the student to profess any particular religious beliefs. We'll see a few more details here. The student was an 11th grade student, and she was required to take a world history course, and the course lasted about a year. And it covered it was basically a standard world history class. And it was interesting because it wasn't even a religion class. Uh, it would have been interesting to see how many problems they would have had if it actually had been a history class dealing specifically with religion, but this was just general world history that was the subject matter here. So as part of this course, the teacher had a slide that was titled Islam Today, and it included a statement that was most Muslims' faith is stronger than the average Christian. And this did not go over too well with the Christian student, and basically the student took offense to it. The other part of the course that the student didn't really care for was the part that described the so-called 5 pillars of Islam. This is just standard information about Islam. And it included the phrase, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. Sometimes you'll hear it said, and Muhammad is his prophet. And of course, the student took exception to that as well. The student was a Christian. Now, the student's father objected. It's a little bit hard to tell from the case whether the student's father was the primary person that was upset about all of this. But in any event, the student refused to participate in this portion of the course. She got the same grade. She did suffer a little bit, didn't give a lot of details. She did end up getting the same grade, but she got like an 86 instead of an 87 or 88. But the bottom line was she got the same grade in the course. So she couldn't really point to any damage as far as grade or anything like that was concerned. So the student sued, or essentially the father sued, but the student turned 18 while the case was pending, and the complaint was about the Muslim content of the course being viewed as endorsing and advancing the Islamic religion. So when the court looked at this, they said, you know, we're going to look at the entire context of this statement, not just the particular two statements that the student didn't really like. Uh, we're not just going to look at those two sentences. We're going to look at the entire course for the year and see if this really amounts to the school trying to push the Islamic religion on this student. One thing that the court said that I thought was pretty important was that they recognized that the school authorities, not the courts, are in the business of deciding what speech is appropriate in the classroom. The courts do not want to get into the business of micromanaging what is being put into the classrooms. Unfortunately, when a lawsuit gets filed, the courts really have no choice but to get down into the trenches to some degree. But I think the courts wanted to make it clear that they really don't want to get into the business of second guessing the teachers, second guessing the school authorities, and they'll do it if they have to. It's part of their job, but they're really going to defer to the teachers and the school officials as far as what's proper in the classroom, unless it's something that's pretty egregious. So the opinion goes on to say that there is value in studying religion on a comparative basis. Uh, it's just part of a general education to know how religion has shaped society, how the history of religion has advanced civilization, basically to know the major world religions, what the differences are. Just to be an educated person, there is value in having that basic knowledge. So when they looked at this content as a whole, and just noticing those two statements, they said there really didn't seem to be anything that suggested that there was a purpose to advance the Islamic religion over Christianity. There didn't seem to be anything that the school was doing that to actually use that course as a pretext or a trick to try to advance Islam over Christianity. It was sort of a general kind of survey course, and they didn't seem to see any problem with the content taken in context as a whole. So the content that they were looking at was essentially just factual information about Islam. They weren't trying to convert anyone to Islam. The students were asked to just demonstrate the understanding of the material, that they were paying attention in class, that they knew about the religion, and the court didn't have any problem with that. Further, the course and the school didn't suggest that the students should adopt those beliefs. They weren't trying to cause the students to become Muslims. They weren't asked to participate in a daily religious exercise, say a prayer at the beginning of the day or anything of that nature. It was just, again, the basic factual content about the religious, system itself. And so they finish up by saying, the students do have some rights to their own religious freedom, but, when it comes to learning things in school, sometimes students are going to have to encounter ideas that they may not personally agree with, and they may be asked to study things they don't agree with. They may have to discuss these things. You may have to talk about communism if you don't, even though you don't agree with it. You may have to talk about capitalism, socialism, different religious beliefs that you don't agree with. And it's just part of learning about the world. And you don't have to necessarily agree with everything that you're learning about, but there is value in learning about these things. Now, personally, I think this opinion came out correctly, and it just shows how difficult it can be for these school districts to just present factual material. I think if the school could have managed to not say that some religious observers were, somehow more serious or more sincere or in some way having some advantage over the other religious adherents, they might have avoided a problem here. So maybe when they go back and think about this content in the future, they could take out some of those statements and just keep it just as 100% factual as possible. Because as sure as you know it, as soon as they start comparing Christians to Muslims or Muslims to Buddhists or any other kinds of comparisons like that, some people are going to take it as an offense, and if you can avoid that, that's the way to go.